Welcome to the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. In-depth conversations and opinion covering a variety of topics from the world of news, sports, and more. Here's Mike McFeely.
Welcome to another episode of the McFeely Mess Podcast at Inforum.com. And we have a return guest this time on the pod, and you all know her. She is Tammy Swift. She is the award-winning writer at the Forum of Fargo-Moorhead. Well, it's true. I was at the meeting today. Don't laugh. We're doing this by Zoom, and you're laughing. It's actually true because I was at the meeting today when you were supposed to get some awards for your writing from the North Dakota Newspaper Association. So you are an award-winning writer, columnist, business writer, jack of all trades in our newsroom, and she does a great job. And I wanted to have Tammy Swift on the podcast today. Hello, Tammy Swift. How are you?
Hello, Mike McFeely. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. Congratulations on your victories. I think
Thank you.
Was it, gosh, I can't remember what the categories were, but you won some awards, so congratulations. It's always nice to be recognized for your work.
I won in agriculture writing, which I never thought would happen, but there you go.
You take the wins when you can get them. You take the wins when you can get them.
That's right.
I wanted to have you on this week because you made a trip to Velva, North Dakota, and cranked out a business story, which was incredibly well read on our website, Inforum.com. And I guess more important to me than that is that it was really interesting and very well written. And you talked to a lot of people that had interesting things to say as it related to a product or a company that most people in North Dakota and Western Minnesota know about, and that's Dot's Pretzels, which originated in Velva, but
Yes.
They're no longer there. So tell us the story in a nut graph, as we say in the business, then we can go from there, Tammy.
Okay, well, Velva has become synonymous with Dot's Pretzels. That's where Dorothy Hankey, the legendary Dorothy Hankey, started making the seasoned pretzel mix. And it became wildly popular, as we all know, and was the company was purchased by Hershey in 2021. And at the time, Hershey said, we're going to keep running it in Velva. We care about your town, blah, blah, blah. But then, of course, ultimately, it boiled down to they said the plant was too small and it wasn't centrally located and some other things, and they wound up closing the plant. And of course, that was devastating to Velva. And Dot, just when she heard that, she was devastated, and she decided she was going to find a new business there. And so that's what she did. And so she worked with someone who used to work for her, and now there's going to be something called Get Coffeed, which is a type of caffeine-infused candy that is going to be manufactured from there.
So sugar and caffeine in candy. Give that to your kids, folks. When that comes out, give it to your 5-year-old and see how it works.
All the things. Yes, absolutely. And I have eaten many Get Coffeeds, and they are pretty good. And you do get a little bit of energy, but you don't get jittery from them, which I think is kind of awesome. So they seem to have it all.
Yeah, Dot's Pretzels were sold a couple of years ago to Hershey Company in Pennsylvania for $1.2 billion, I want to say. I think That's the figure. And I don't know how much of that.
Several other pretzel companies. So that wasn't all Dot's, but yes. Yep.
Okay. And Dot's Pretzels, of course, became, as you said, they became synonymous with Velva, North Dakota, because they're the sort of that, as you wrote, garlicky, zesty, well-seasoned pretzel snack that if you have one, you have 5 pounds and end up drinking a lot of beer or a lot of water or whatever you're going to drink. But and people love them, and people from all over the country love them. This is not just like I was trying to think of some other North Dakota companies that have kind of become famous for food. And I was thinking like Pizza Corner Pizza, Pugsley sandwiches, but those are more regional things. I don't think Pizza Corner was ever a national phenomenon. And, when I would go to Florida or Texas, you could see Dots Pretzels in stores in Florida and Texas and New York City and all over the place. And so it was really probably an international phenomenon as well.
Absolutely. There were just, Reddit sites and all these different online places that were just dedicated to the love of Dots Pretzels and people just talking about how crazy they were about them. And, when I interviewed the mayor of Velva, he told me that some people were such avid fans that they would even divert their family vacations to go stop in Velva and see the plant. So, I mean, people were truly crazy about it and in a good way. And so, yeah, it was a huge, huge loss for Velva in terms of just public relations and goodwill. And so, yeah, it was kind of sad when we heard it was closing.
I was driving back from Mankato, Minnesota, back to Fargo-Moorhead one time, and I saw a sign. I was taking the back roads because I was bored of going the easy way up 169 and then up 94. And I saw a sign for the world's largest ball of twine. I think Jackson, Minnesota, something like that. And so when you see, I mean, if you're going to go see a Dots Pretzels plant, that's probably something you have to do. I saw the world's largest ball of twine in Jackson, Minnesota, just by happenstance. So you kind of triggered my memory there. So thank you for that.
I'm a little envious. I hope you got your picture taken by it.
I think it was before selfies and I was by myself. And so there's really might have been before cell phones or at least before smartphones. So
wasted opportunity there. That's too bad.
I'll bet it's still there. I'll bet if I wanted to badly enough, I could probably go find it again.
It may have grown. Who knows? Yes.
Was it a surprise to the people in Velva when the plant was closed? And I think it was at the end, I think you said it was 27 jobs that were lost. And at its peak, I think Dots employed more than 100 people or right around 100 people.
Yes.
Once Hershey bought it, did they see this coming or were they surprised when it happened?
I think like in the back of their minds, they kind of thought, this is a major corporation. It's always about the bottom line, right? And so I think they were all cautiously optimistic that it would not happen, but in the back of their mind, they kind of knew how the world works as well. So even so, the mayor had said something like, I wish they had even just tried to talk to us about it. And we could have probably tried to negotiate something or, do something to keep them there and to keep them from closing it. So he was actually quite surprised when he got the news because it was just sort of his worst fears realized.
Well, and aside from the jobs, and that's obviously the most important thing, is that I'm sure that they're pretty good paying jobs in a town of about 1,000 people. And so, a place that employs 25 to 30 people, that's a pretty good company in a town of 1,000 people.
It certainly is.
And so aside from that important part, there's a little bit of identity there for Velva. Right, I've been to Velva, and it is a nice place. You wrote about how beautiful it is. I mean, it really is. The Mouse River goes through there. I was there actually. I think last time I was there was like 2011, and that was when they had the flood.
The flood.
And Velva was, like Minot got devastated. Velva took a hit too, because the Mouse River flooded that year. But I mean, Dots Pretzels, as you wrote, literally put it on the map. I mean, everybody, and it was kind of a cool thing because if you knew the story behind, these are made in Velva, North Dakota, and it's like people, wow, really? And it kind of, it gave them their identity, I would think, a little bit for the town, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I would think if you would ask anybody what they knew about Velva, that's probably the first thing they would come up with. And, Dot was so generous about it. She literally put a little tiny silhouette of North Dakota on her packaging with a star to designate Velva. So, I mean, people definitely knew where it came from. So, yeah, it was just, like I said, it was synonymous with the brand.
What was the vibe you got from the people you talked with? I know you talked with the mayor, Mike Schreiner, and some other people, a teacher, a longtime educator in town. It sounds like you went to a cafe maybe and had a hamburger and maybe talked with some folks there.
Yeah.
Was it a good burger, first of all? Let's get that out of the way.
It was a fabulous burger. You always get a little cautious when someone says world's best. You're like, okay, that's a mighty big claim, but it was a really good, big, juicy burger. And it's obviously kind of the place where a lot of Velva hangs out. And I just found the people in general very friendly. The superintendent and his wife, who I interviewed there, they had only been there a year, but they had so many positive things to say about it. And also Iris Swedland, who was the other librarian / teacher I talked to, she was super positive about the city. And she told some very funny stories, which I didn't have room to include, about like when she first interviewed for a job there. She knew nothing about Velva, and she actually had to get a plane ticket to Minot because she didn't have a car. And she arrived in Velva. I don't know if it was at night or what, but when it was time to go to school the next day, she got up like at 3 a.m. and she was staying with these people, and she wanted to call a taxi to get a ride to Velva. And they just about died laughing. They were like, we do not have taxi service in Velva. So, I mean, at first she was like, oh my gosh, this is the smallest place in the world. But she obviously loves it. And she talked about how intelligent the people are and how they are always wanting to do continuing education. And it's kind of a Norwegian community, and just had a great small town vibe.
And you're a small town girl, right? I mean, you're from Glen Ellen, North Dakota.
I'm in Glen Ellen right now.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
right. So I mean, that was kind of your jam. Velva was kind of your vibe.
Absolutely. And I just really enjoyed hearing that, because I just didn't hear the usual things that, the criticisms that people sometimes have about small towns. I mean, I'm sure it's not a perfect place, but as Mike had said, he said, it's not Mayberry, but when people see you on the street, they wave at you. And, that meant a lot to him in terms of finding a place where he wanted to relocate his family.
What was the name of the burger joint? I forgot the name of it. Do you remember?
The Finish Line.
The Finish Line. Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and
so you have to check it out.
It's almost like, do you ever see the movie Buddy Elf with Buddy the Elf, Will Ferrell?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The little cafe in New York City in Manhattan that has a sign outside, "World's Best Cup of Coffee."
Ooh, sorry about this.
And then Will Ferrell goes in and says, "Congratulations!" And everybody looks at him like he's crazy. He goes, "World's Best Cup of Coffee! Congratulations!" So that's what you triggered me with that too. And you said the world's best hamburger, or
exactly.
North Dakota's best hamburger. I thought of Buddy the Elf. Yes. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. It was a pretty fine burger, I will tell you that. I mean, I loved it.
Do the people feel, what sense did you get from the people that you talked to about, that's where I was going with the original question about the burger, was what did people feel about the loss of Dot's Pretzels? Were they sad? Were they angry? Were they wistful? What was the vibe?
It was kind of a mix. There was some cynicism, like, well, we knew this was going to happen. But then there was also just like, one person said it was like mourning. We're still kind of grieving. And Mike himself had said something like, I kind of took it personally, because there were all these great promises when Hershey came in. Hershey is a factory town, so they kind of, they certainly understand the importance of a business, a dominant business like that to a community, and the fact that they couldn't, keep running it when, let's face it, how big of a difference was that to Hershey's bottom line?
Right. Yeah. Right. Yes. A multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate.
Yeah. They make Reese's
27
for
jobs
God's
in Velva is nothing to them, right?
I know. And I mean, and so I think someone even had said that, like, what would it have taken to just keep it almost open like a little museum or something, just to acknowledge Velva and how central it was to the creation of Dot's Pretzels.
Is there a fear that, and I don't know if you asked this question or not, but is there a fear that Dot's Pretzels are no longer going to be Dot's Pretzels because they're going to be made by a big, huge corporation? And the parallel I will always make for the rest of my days is Pizza Corner Pizza.
Yes.
Because it's a similar story, kind of, that Pizza Corner Pizza, there's still the pizza shop in Valley City, but the frozen pizzas which were made there was sold to I think a Minnesota or Minneapolis outfit. And almost immediately the new company changed how they made Pizza Corner pizzas, and they are not the same. They are not the same. And they got a ton of complaints. And so is that fear in Velva that Dot's Pretzels are going to change?
I think so. And I love Dot's Pretzels and I still buy them. And I mean, maybe I'm a little biased, but I don't think they're quite as good. I think, I'm sorry, they are just don't have that North Dakota TLC or something. But no, it's like one thing I've noticed is every once in a while you get a hard pretzel, like a super hard pretzel. And that's something I never noticed under Dot's watch. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
So I don't know if they're doing some kind of cost cutting or what it is. But hopefully I'm not going to get sued by Hershey for saying that. But I don't think, I think anytime you upsize and make something mega scale, it is hard to always maintain the consistency.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it stands to reason. I have a journalism degree, not a business degree, and I certainly have never worked in the corporate world. But I mean, it only makes sense that if you have a factory with 27 people from Velva and Minot, making pretzels and giving it their tender, loving care, their TLC, as you said, it stands to reason logically that if those operations are moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania, or wherever their pretzel factory is, they're probably being made in a factory with 6 other different brands of pretzels now, right? They just get put into a different bag.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
just on a much bigger scale,
right? And so it just stands to reason that they're not going to have the same little homey touch. It is what it is, but
yeah. And I know, like, from what I knew about Dorothy Hankey is she really, really cared about quality. I mean, she even put her phone number on the bags in the beginning so people could call if they had complaints or questions.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah, she did. Who does that?
Yeah.
But that was how committed she was to keeping customers happy. And obviously you're not going to call Hershey and talk to the CEO about, oh, well, my Dot's Pretzels are a little bit hard. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
No.
So, it's just a lot easier when you have that much personal stake in it. And, you care about every bag that comes out of there.
How many drunken phone calls from bars did Dot get in the early days? I mean, some guy pounding down Bud Lights or Busch Lights in a small town bar, and hey, wonder what this number is. I'll call it. Hello, this is Dot.
I wonder.
Oh, your pretzels kick ass, Dot. Thanks. It's awesome. Be fantastic.
I know. Oh, I bet she has so many stories to tell. I mean, I did get to talk to her once, and, she doesn't talk to the media much. And she just told me amazing stories. Like, there were times where, she would be packing an entire, shipment herself, or, if somebody didn't show up for work, she or her husband would just step into the line and do their work. I mean, she just was a super hard worker and super committed to that business.
Yeah. So what's the new company? You talked a little bit about it earlier. What's the background on that? It's the coffee. What was the name of it? I'm sorry.
called Get Coffee'd.
Get
And
coffee.
I feel a little less confident about that one because that was Tasha's part. This was a team effort. But yeah, it's the guy who conceived this is he used to work for Dot. I think he did marketing for her.
Okay.
And so I think that helped him quite a lot. In terms of getting her backing and her approval. And she still owned the factory, the facility that Dots was in. So, but Tasha did tell a funny story that, when he sent the first version of this candy to her, she was like, it sucks. She didn't like it at all. It's gross, or she said something like that. And but he just kept working on it, and I think it's pretty tasty now. I mean, I actually, when I was writing this story, I was popping Get Coffees like crazy. Surprised my heart didn't blow up, but yeah. So they're tasty, and they do give you a little bit of energy, and so I can see people liking them.
Okay, that's good. Are they in stores around here in Fargo-Moorhead? I have not noticed them if they are, but that doesn't
Yeah,
mean
I
anything
think.
because I don't notice candy that much. But
Yeah, right. I think they are like they were really trying to roll them out in convenience stores, especially. And so if they're not in a store near you, they will be very soon. And they have kind of an interesting packaging concept because it's like a coffee cup, and then you've got these lozenges in there. And so I think the big thing will just be getting people to understand that, what it is. There's candy in there. It looks like coffee, but there's candy in there. So there might be a little learning curve there, but I don't know. America likes its coffee. I
Mhm.
think, people love to stay awake and have energy.
Yeah.
So hopefully this will work in their favor.
You know what I found interesting about Dot's Pretzels is honestly they're fairly expensive compared to other pretzels, right? I mean, you can buy a bag of rolled gold pretzels for whatever. Now it's
Yep.
probably $2.99 or more. Thanks, Joe Biden. But
Let's blame them for
yeah,
that
the
too.
cost of pretzels went through the roof. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. Good luck in November, buddy. Um, but Dots pretzels were not cheap, and they eventually Dots rolled out like honey mustard and
Hmm.
some like chicken and fish coating. Like all businesses, they had to expand, and they
Yes.
did, but none of it was cheap in my opinion. But yet people still gobbled them up and bought them. Obviously, the sales were great, or Hershey wouldn't have bought them.
Right. I mean, they were just unique enough. Nobody's really like them at all. And I think even part of that was the small town charm around it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I mean, it's probably not as cheap for them to manufacture,
Mm-hmm.
being it comes out of little Velva. So, I'm going to pay that extra amount. And you talked about how irresistible they are, and they really are. I mean, they should have really patented the no one can eat just one because it's just like you
Yeah.
just want to keep eating them. There's something magical in there. And they have kind of that little umami in them. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I guess they're just worth the price tag to people.
Yeah. No, we bought them once in a while. It wasn't like I didn't buy 5 pounds a week, but every once in a while you'd be in the store and you'd go, oh yeah, get some Dots and throw them in
Yeah.
throw them whatever in the car or whatever and snack on them. Um, I was trying to think. Pizza Corner Pizza was a North Dakota food stuff that was popular regionally.
Hmm.
Pugsley sandwiches. Do you know what Pugsley sandwiches are?
Yes,
They are.
I do.
Are they still around? I think they are. They're made in Devil's Lake, or they were. I don't
I
get to
think
enough
they're
convenience
still,
stores in North Dakota to notice if they're still on the
I think
shelves.
they're still around.
Okay.
And then there's that I don't that Grubber Spuds pizza. Have you seen that?
Yes,
That's
and
also.
yes, and you wrote about that a couple of years ago. When I was googling Pugsley sandwiches, um, Gruber Sputzels is the name of that company,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's the same guy that started Pugsley sandwiches. Yeah,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so And I
There's
haven't seen those around either. They have frozen pizzas as well.
Yeah. It looks like Pugsley's might be still around. So yeah, that's another North Dakota food
Yeah.
product, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Um, anything on the horizon for getting out and about? Did you go to Velva? How close is Glen Ellen to Velva?
I don't think Velva's close to anything. Man, it took forever to get there because from Glen Ellen to Velva, you had to take all these back roads, and I almost hit a deer, and
Oh,
it was yeah. But and then if you could take a more major highway from Velva down to Bismarck, but that's like 2 hours longer to back to my
oh,
hometown. So, but I do have some other plans. I would like to go to Oaks, North Dakota. They've got a hometown girl who returned back to Oaks and is going to or has opened a bakery.
oh.
And it sounds like they have a couple of other very cool businesses
Okay.
there. And so I'm planning to do that. And I also had done a story on the Meyer Theater in Hebron, North Dakota, which is just down the road from where my hometown is. And I would like to do a series on small town movie theaters as well.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I love being on the road. I would be on the road all the time if I could be. So,
Well, and plus the good part about that is you get to, if you go down to Oaks, you can check out the hamburger joint there or the restaurant
yes,
there. I'm a big restaurant guy. I like to eat. And so
yes, me
when
too.
I travel, that's like my number one thing is I'm looking up restaurants to try in towns that I visit, whether it's a big city or a small city. Always is supper clubs. If I'm going, I love supper clubs. I don't know if that
Oh,
was a
yeah.
thing when you and I are
Like
about the
old
same age.
school.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. Like where they have, steak and,
Hmm.
crab stuffed shrimp and all
Yes.
these things that supper clubs only have. And
Yes.
you
Yes.
always have Texas toast with your meal.
Yep. A
And
relish
I
tray.
yeah, a relish tray.
Yeah. Salad
Yes.
bar. And so you get the steak and hash browns. Then you go visit the
Oh,
salad bar. Um,
now I'm hungry.
oh,
That sounds so good.
that that is, you know, we like to as Americans we're big on nostalgia, and a
Yeah.
lot of it is BS. Life wasn't as good back then as we thought it was. It's just that we were young and dumb and didn't have any problems because we were 15 years old. You find, but one thing that would make America a better place. All right, we're divided right now, right? We're a divided country. What would bring
Hmm.
us together is the resurgence of supper clubs, because
I
you
agree.
cannot have an enemy in a supper club. You go, and I've told the story a million times, but growing up, I'm from the Twin Cities area, and my mom and dad bought a cabin shortly after I was born, up in the Alexandria area, and there was a place up there. It's called Chet's Lakeside Inn. It's a chicken shack type of place. It's still
Mm.
going, but it used to be a 3-2 bar with setups. And so that means they didn't have a full liquor license. And a lot of supper clubs didn't have full liquor licenses because they're really hard to
Really?
get back before it became a drunk country. But so they had 3-2 bars with setups, and you would bring your own bottle of booze. And then you would buy the mix, from
Ah.
the place. And so we'd go out to eat at Chet's as a special treat. We were up at the cabin, and my dad would bring a bottle of booze with him, and then he'd order, 7 Up or whatever. Give me a 7 Up setup, and they would bring a little glass with ice and 7 Up, and he'd pour in his own booze, and then you would drink that. I mean
I
that
love that.
that we need that to return, to have a steak, hash browns, a relish tray, and setups. And the world would be
Absolutely.
America would be cured and healed and back together again in like 2 weeks. That's all it would take. 2 weeks.
That would make America great again, for sure.
Yes, yes, it would. Yep.
You know what,
Make
Mike?
supper clubs great again. I'm gonna whatever.
Yeah, bring back the supper club.
MSCGA.
And let's just call it supper, shall we? I mean, let's just go,
Yeah.
enough with the fancy dinner thing. Let's just call it supper.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Tammy, thank you. Thanks for taking some time out. Really good story. I enjoyed it. And obviously our readers did too, because it was one of our most read stories of last week. So good job.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it.
Yep. Okay. Tammy Swift on the McFeely Mess podcast. Thank you to her, and thank you to you for listening. And please subscribe to Inforum, because then Tammy and myself can go on the road and try to find the lost supper clubs of North Dakota and Minnesota. What a great series that would be. Actually,
gosh,
Bill Marcel Jr., the guy who like owns the place, runs the place, he actually gave me permission to like go on the road in Minnesota and find like pork tenderloin sandwiches, because I wrote a couple of years ago about a pork tenderloin sandwich I found down on Star Lake in Ottertail. And he goes, you should do a series on that. Go find the best pork tenderloin sandwich in Minnesota. We should do I'm like, okay, that's fine.
That came from the highest position here.
And I didn't take advantage of it. How dumb am I?
It's practically a mandate.
It is.
Yes.
Yep. Make Mike smart again. That would be another thing we could do. Thank you, Tammy. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Yep.
We'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Thank you, Tammy. This has been the McFeely Mess podcast at Inforum.com. Thanks all for listening. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks for listening to the McFeely Mess podcast at Inforum.com. For more podcasts and columns, head to Inforum.com and search Mike McFeely